And I think we are here. Hello, hello, hello. How's everyone doing? Oh, can you see us? Can you hear us? It says excellent connection,
Um,
but I've known YouTube to lie.
yeah, usually when I'm involved, that's not the case.
Nah, it's fine, it's fine. Hello, hello everyone. Okay, I think we're good, we're
Hello.
good. Let's see.
How's my volume?
Yes, how is our volume? Because we're gonna have to do same as last night. We're gonna have to do a little bit of mixing when it comes to my streams. They're always a little bit gerrymandered. Nice, lovely, lovely, lovely. Okay, so the chat is saying we're fine. Uh,
Very good.
okay. We will not be having background music for the stream because it kept turning off last night, which is fine. I wasn't stressing about it. uh, but yeah, nah. Uh, I suppose we should go through the introductions, shouldn't we? Um,
Yeah.
yeah. Would you like to introduce yourself? Strange new guest star.
Sure. Hello. I'm Biblaridian. You can call me Bib for short. Um, I run a YouTube channel of the same name, and I mostly talk about biology and linguistics in creative contexts, I guess, in world building contexts, how to use principles of biology and linguistics in world building. But I very much consider myself a whatever you call someone who is specialized in two things. Um, and the jack of two trades is the master of neither. So I feel very ignorant outside of my special interest fields. Um, and so, if you caught the stream with Jake earlier, this is the second stream today that's based on the theme of someone more knowledgeable than me explain something to me. Um, because, oh, then
Hey.
the Conlangery stream has just ended.
Mm,
So, welcome to all the new people joining us from that. Um,
mm.
and
Would you like
I've
to start
completely lost
again?
my train of thought.
Sorry.
Where am I? So, hi, I'm Bib. No.
Mm-mm.
So yeah, one of the things that I am hoping in the very near future is I'm going to branch out a little bit into topics that I do not have nearly as much experience in as biology or linguistics, and go into more anthropological and cultural topics. And so I'm trying to build up a sort of base of knowledge to give me some degree of confidence when talking about these things.
Mm.
Um, And one of the areas that I do have a lot of interest in, but have never actually delved into properly, is architecture. Um, because I don't actually know how relevant this is to get into at this point, but I always like when I can make things that are unique and that are not obviously cribbed from the real world. Because it would all be very well and easy for me to, when making a culture, just say, oh, well, they're just like the Romans, let's say, and just copy Roman architecture, because clearly Roman architecture worked very well. But I would really like to understand the principles involved so that I can make my own stuff, which largely is what world building is about in general. And so that is why I am here today, because Hannah knows more about agriculture. Agriculture? I'm sure she knows more about agriculture than me as well, but she also knows more about architecture than I do. See, I don't even know what the right word is. So,
um,
yeah, that's what we're going to talk about.
yeah, hi. And if you don't know who I am Hannah something. I This is my channel that we're currently on. I also do a lot of world building stuff. I normally focus on culture, on religion, whatever happens to be interesting to me at the time. And yeah, we are going to be talking about architecture. And I will say I didn't know too much about it before we started planning this video out, but I've done a lot of research since then. Um, and specifically, we're going to be covering Neolithic architecture, simply because it's the most interesting to me, but it is also around the time when we started developing a lot of the more basic structures, the more basic, like it was where we set a lot of the groundwork for all future architecture. So it's really interesting to talk about.
Mm.
Uh, and yeah, so
Yeah,
I'm going to be rambling for 2 hours, and Bib here is my captive audience, my hostage, if you will.
I will occasionally be asking um, probably quite speculative and probably quite stupid questions at various points to sort of probe what the different possibilities are for these things. So,
Mm.
and also in terms of the Neolithic thing, for what it's worth, I do have um, for the Alien Biospheres series, they're not quite at the Neolithic yet, but they will be very soon. So it will be good to have like a base of knowledge to use when they do get to that point.
Oh, cool! That's amazing. I didn't know that actually. Did I? Dad.
Well, I still don't exactly know how to apply the terms that we use in human anthropology to a completely alien planet,
Mm.
but I think they're roughly at the boundary between Paleolithic and Neolithic.
Okay, okay, okay. See what you mean. Uh, let's see. So, I guess we'll get started then.
Yeah, let's
Mm,
do it.
okay. Let's see. So, architecture. 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 um, architecture
I'm with you
is,
so far.
yeah, great. um, so, architecture is the art and science of designing buildings and spaces. And while architecture as a practice is best left to the professionals in real life, we as writers and world builders can learn a lot from architectural concepts and history to make our own fictional buildings. So we will be starting with Neolithic architecture from a time where tools and mediums were limited, and explore what made these buildings work, how they worked, and how this knowledge can be applied to the rest of our world building. For the sake of visual clarity, I will be turning off our webcams and VTuber models
Mm.
for this portion.
Yes, I don't want to be blocking the fabulous view of whatever that is.
The the plenty of images that I have found for the yeah, no, most of the slideshow is images, and that's how I like it. So,
Good.
right. So we are going to be starting off with form and function. The two pillars of architecture is form and function. Function is how a building or space works to meet its intended use. So it serves the needs of individual rooms or entire buildings as needed. Historically, specialization was rare, and single buildings were more often used as houses or workshops or warehouses or granaries or places of worship, and in some cases, even defenses and tombs, with one building having one single function. As societies became more complex, however, so did the buildings, separating themselves according to their functions. Interior spaces took longer to differentiate and developed more unevenly. And until recently, it was more common for houses to consist of a single room where people slept, cooked, wove, and worked. But as construction techniques have improved, the practice of dedicating separate spaces to buildings for different functions spread, starting with the upper social classes and gradually descending. A kitchen, for example, must first be built with non-flammable materials to prevent the entire building from catching fire. A butcher's shop needs a waterproof floor to prevent blood from pooling, etc. Buildings, especially homes, will always be a compromise between practicality, which is that it's simpler and cheaper to build individual spaces with multiple functions, and efficiency. It's easier and safer to cook without having beds or wool or weaving materials in the way. And from
Mm.
there, we can then look at form. Form is how that solution looks and feels. The form cannot be in conflict with the function of a building or a room. For example, it would be very bad to put a decorative straw wickerwork over a stove, but
Mm.
But that kitchen can be styled to be more minimalistic or rustic or ultra modern. It can be gilded and decorated to the absolute maximum or as clean and simple as possible. And that is all according to the styles and potential culture of the people that will be using that space.
Mm.
When a modern architect works on a modern building, they apply many techniques to achieve their desired form. For example, a schoolhouse that uses bright natural light and open spaces between rooms has been said to encourage and inspire learning. And libraries with high ceilings and wood paneling can feel calm and more welcoming. So it's all these small little, almost uh, it's stuff you don't notice, but it's always in the back of your mind. It's I've completely forgotten the term for it, but you understand. I hope.
Yeah, yeah,
Mm,
I think so.
mm, mm, mm,
And this is of particular interest to me because I feel, with a very little foray into architecture that I've done before, it has, I think I tended to bias things towards function.
mm,
So a lot of my designs come across as very minimalistic, and a lot of them just look kind of like just stark, bland, like cubes.
mm.
Um, because I do not yeah, I need to familiarize myself more with how like culture and aesthetics can be incorporated into architecture, which is I think where we get a large amount of the variation that we see.
Mm. And I mean, that's not a bad thing because I mean, it means that you are focusing on the function, and then all that you have to do to then improve upon that is look more at the form. And the form is where all of the more abstract stuff comes into it. So we'll talk about that a little bit more later as well.
Very good.
Mm. Also, the word I was looking for earlier was subconscious. So,
Ah,
yeah, got to give me like 5 minutes to load.
no, no problem.
Right. So some buildings' very purpose is having a spectacular form, such as monuments honoring a great or maybe megalomaniacal leader or religious works such as churches. However, all humans need to experience beauty and have a desire to see the familiarity of their culture and art within their home. And even in bare Soviet apartment buildings from Soviet Russia, you can still find quilts that were made by a babushka. Like that is very often the way that the homes were decorated, even though they were designed with pure practicality in mind. And it's just that extra
Hmm.
human element that gets added into any building, regardless of how bland its original intention was for it to be. Thinking that bit deeper into how and why buildings are designed the way they are today and throughout our history can in turn help you create settings that feel richer and realer by considering how their form and function would look and operate in the world you've created for them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, I think I'm
Yeah,
following.
awesome. Okay, so moving on to right, no, yes. So here we have an example of function in case you haven't gotten it quite yet. So the idea is that everything is completely fireproof. It's all tiled from the floor to the ceiling. We have stainless steel across the board for every, not only the cabinets and the extractor fan, but also for all of the utensils. And that's just because it's the cleanest material, it's the most hygienic material, it's the easiest to spot dirt and stains and mud, etc., etc. And then you have an example of form where a lot more attention has gone into the actual design and the actual like beautification of the room itself. So even though granite countertops, and I can attest to this, I have granite countertops, do look pretty, it's a lot harder to spot dirt and messes and stains and stuff on there. So you have to be a lot more cautious when you just doing like a
Oh,
general clean. But it's very popular because it's a very pretty pattern. It's very nice. And then you also have these sort of almost needlessly aesthetic details, such as in the cabinets, where you can see there's more attention has gone into the wood paneling and the way that the wood paneling looks than the fact that it might not be too wise to have wood paneling above a stove. And obviously, it's
yeah. Now
not.
that you mention it,
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, obviously, it's not actually a fire risk. I'm sure it's been treated or it's been calculated to not be within danger range, but it it is open flames. It's a gas stove.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Yeah, and then you also have just little details here and there, and that is not how that's supposed to look, but all right. That was fun. I just put my mouse over it. Okay.
Oh boy.
Oh boy. It's okay. It's the corruptions happening slowly. We can get it through the whole stream first. Right. So, we're looking at the history. Moving from the Paleolithic to the Neolithic was a very fun time for some people.
Hmm.
But it was ultimately the Neolithic revolution that switched us from Paleolithic living to Neolithic living, with Neolithic being classified more as a stationary, sedimentary lifestyle, as opposed to the Paleolithic era, wherein most of the people living in that time were hunter-gatherers. Um, as far as the Paleolithic is concerned, all we have to inform us of their architecture and homes are from the scraps we have found throughout the world. Since most, if not all, societies at the time were nomadic, their homes were designed as temporary huts, tents, and shelters made out of wood, straw, and rock, or even bones. They were built in outdoor areas and were easily defendable from wildlife and protected from inclement weather, hopefully. In Siberia, a tent was discovered with its frame made entirely out of mammoth bones. The tusks supported the roof, while the skulls and thigh bones formed the walls of the tent. It was large
Hmm.
enough for multiple families to live inside and had three small hearths for warmth within it. But ultimately, it was very simple. It had hearths for warmth, and it had space to sleep in, but it did not have any infrastructure within it in order to uh, ease the lives of the people living within it. So
I think I've
ultimately,
seen.
mm,
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say. I think I've seen pictures from the sites at which they're like really intricately made of like interlocking pieces of bone. It's like
yeah, no, it's it's
very cool.
it's it's very majestic. I mean, it's very
Yeah.
striking. Yeah, 100%. Um, and then would you say this is practical or more focused on form?
I mean, I would say more practical, but
Mm,
um, I'm sure I know one of the sort of cliches in archaeoanthropology is any time that we don't understand the significance of some particular thing is, oh, it's ritual. It has some ritual function that we just don't know about. So who knows? Maybe there was some significance. I do remember, of course, I'm going to forget all the details now, but I do remember hearing about this site somewhere in North America, I think, where there was a pit trap
mm,
um, that was found. The remnants of an old pit trap with 18, I think it was 18 mammoth carcasses at the bottom,
whoa.
and all 18 of them were missing their left shoulder blade. And that
Ah,
implies that for these people, for whatever reason, the left shoulder blade of the mammoth had some sort of special significance, whether it was for some engineering purpose in building structures like these, or if it had some sort of, for whatever reason, ritual significance.
mm,
I don't know how much is known about that, but
mm,
for all we know, the people putting these mammoth huts together could have some sort of, you know, more specific cultural purpose to the way and reason they went about building these things.
yeah, for sure. And I mean, that's super interesting as well because it means they weren't using every part of the skeleton or even like most parts of the skeleton. It was just one part. It was the
Yeah,
shoulder blade.
they left the vast majority of it
Yeah.
behind. So, other than presumably the meat, which they would have eaten, but
I hope
specifically from
so.
the skeleton, they took the left shoulder blade. Yeah,
Yeah.
otherwise it would have been very wasteful.
No, that's fascinating because it's so much of what I look at as well is like, oh, how to use every part of the animal and don't be wasteful,
Mm.
waste not, want not, and how that kind of felt like a recurring theme throughout most of like the Paleolithic. That's fascinating that that's the case. Actually, wait, no, hang on. I'll remember this for later. We're getting distracted. um, right. Uh, And okay, so a second example is 50,000 years ago, and unfortunately, I didn't find an image that we could use as a reference here. There is a site called Terra Amata that is dated to 50,000 years ago, wherein a group of hunter gatherers built a long and narrow house, which would today probably be called a longhouse. using a ring of stones as the foundation with 2 flat threshold stones to mark the doorways at opposite ends of the building. There were vertical posts down the middle of the house that supported roofs and walls made of sticks and twigs, and was likely covered over with a layer of straw. But this wasn't really a true house. It was only a temporary shelter that would be easily left behind by the group that built it when they moved on, which is why we don't classify it as a house. True houses were a development of the Neolithic period. The Neolithic Revolution brought with it, among many other things, widespread adoption of agriculture, domestication of animals, the consolidation of some bands into tribes, and the establishment of permanent settlements and the need for long-term living spaces. Now, it's important to note that although you could say that the Neolithic started around 10,000 BCE, this number actually changes across the world depending on the areas that different cultures developed in geographically. As you'll see, one of our examples here is that we'll talk about later is the city of Teotihuacan. I'm getting there.
Teotihuacan, yeah.
Yeah, sorry, no, that I've said it before. I don't know why it tripped me up so badly. Which, despite existing between 200 BCE and 750 ACE, it never developed copper or arsenic copper for general use in tools, making it a technologically Neolithic site. This, of course, doesn't reflect the city and its inhabitants' ability to develop, as socioeconomically it was more advanced than many Bronze Age societies from before its time. It's just the way that we have academically defined the difference between the Neolithic age and what came after it, the Chalcolithic or Copper Age. Right, okay, so
If I
that's...
remember correctly, Teotihuacan was in like the top 5 largest settlements in the world at the time it was built.
Yeah, no, definitely. It
Or-
was hugely
yeah.
important. It's what I mean when I say I want to do more research into Mesoamerican cultures and development, because it's
Mm.
so fascinating. And it's also something that was so separated from like European culture, and that it's I find it interesting just off of that alone. But yeah,
Yeah,
no,
I know that
mm,
Tenochtitlan, the capital of the Aztec Empire, was oh boy, now I'm second guessing myself, but I'm fairly certain it was the same or roughly the same size as medieval Paris, and
mm,
they did have metal tools, but not in any great abundance, and they didn't have a lot of other things. They didn't have wheels because like wheels would not have been very fit for purpose in the wetlands that the city was constructed in.
mm,
So yeah, I don't exactly know what the boundary between the Neolithic and Chalcolithic or the other periods are, but they
mm.
would have been comparable in some ways to Teotihuacan in that sense.
Oh, that's so
So
cool.
yeah, lots of interesting stuff.
Yeah, for sure. It's so interesting, and it's so cool that the more you look into it, the less um it becomes. We're kind of taught that like history, at least when you talk about like early education, like just up to like high school, you're kind of taught that like history is kind of like leveling up on a scale.
Yeah,
Yeah, and it's
yeah,
so cool looking into it and discovering that's like not the case at all. Yeah.
yeah. Teleology is not good generally.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's the same argument as the diagram of man's evolution, where it's also
Yeah,
displayed
the
as like,
march of
yeah,
progress.
yeah, linear progress, yeah. Anyway, moving on. Before we get distracted too much. Oh, I skipped it. Okay, look at it
Mm?
quickly, admire it. It took me a while to make that. I'm lying, it took me a couple minutes. It's fine. Okay. I don't like how it's doing that.
That's very interesting. Whatever happened.
Yeah. Okay. Are we gonna do it again? Okay, no. It seems okay. The corruption is coming. The stream will break down in 2 hours. Well, 1 hour and
Oh
20
boy.
minutes. uh, okay. So let's talk about a couple of case studies. There were a wide range of homes and buildings across the Neolithic period, with some being relatively similar to how we construct homes in our modern day, to others being incredibly unique in their building method. So let's go over a few significant ones, starting with the linear pottery culture. The linear pottery culture was famous for two styles of buildings in their settlements, their longhouses and their rondels, with the height of their culture occurring around 5,500 to 4,500 BCE in Central to Eastern Europe. The classic building of the culture took the form of a wattle and daub house with straight walls and a gable thatched roof that ran lengthwise along the house. Their windowless walls, with only one doorway, were supported by typically oak posts, and they could be occupied for as long as 30 years. These linear pottery houses were also the largest freestanding buildings in the world during their time. So they were pretty significant for the era.
Mm.
And then here I've got more images. Lovely. Um,
I think we're going to get into longhouses later because they crop up in quite a few places around the world generally, right?
yeah, yeah, for sure. It was one of the
Yeah.
yeah, not templates, but yeah, it was very common.
So
Uh,
I'm
mm,
assuming that the reason why they're long as opposed to being just big in every dimension is just because of it's easier to build them that way.
mm. It's well, I actually don't quite know. It's I do know that they were long to contain in theory it was either to contain multiple families in one house or it was also split up into separate rooms and they would also keep livestock within the building as well. So they would all
Mm.
they would separate the space into rooms and then they would have one room for the people and one room for the livestock. And I'm not
Okay.
entirely sure if that was exactly why they were so long. I know you could have entire tribes or groups or bands that would live in one single
Mhm.
longhouse. I think that's North American.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
there is
think
one
the
tribe specifically.
Haudenosaunee.
That
I think yeah.
I
The
can guarantee you, even if I knew, I wouldn't remember the name. But yeah, I do. I think I even use an image from them later on when we do talk about longhouses.
okay,
Yeah.
cool.
Uh, right. Okay. And then moving on, we have more corrupted images. It's fine. We'll just do a quick jump back and forth every time. Um, we have Çatalhöyük. Çatalhöyük was a large Neolithic and Chalcolithic proto-city settlement that was discovered in central Anatolia in Turkey and existed approximately between 7,500 BCE and 5,600 BCE. Excavation of the site revealed 18 different layers of buildings that had been constructed on top of one another over thousands of years. The city is thought to be made up entirely of domestic buildings, with some of the larger homes having ornate murals depicting hunting scenes painted on their walls and decorated throughout with cow and bull skulls complete with horns. The houses were constructed of, well, hang on, let me move to the next one because then you can see that a bit better. Uh, right, so there's the murals and then also the bull horns as well. Where was
Mm.
I? Uh, right. The houses were constructed of mud brick with smoothed plaster interiors and were crammed together without footpaths or streets, making the overall structure more like a honeycomb than a series of separate buildings. Um, yeah, so there were
Now,
alleyways in between the buildings, but they were like clustered together into blocks of multiple
mm.
buildings with flat roofs that would be used as well, I'll say next in the next line. uh,
So
mm,
I had a question about this. If so, I've seen images of Çatalhöyük, um,
mm,
and what I wonder about is, as you say, the buildings or rooms are very densely packed together, and there's no streets or footpaths unless you count like the roofs that
mm,
acted as like kind of a communal area.
yeah.
Is it known, and I could totally understand if it's not known,
Mm,
what the reason for building all the structures so densely together is? Because as it seems to me, it would be really easy for someone to say, I want a little bit of breathing room. There's plenty of room on the Anatolian plain for them to just move a little bit away from everyone else and, you know,
mm,
have space for like, a garden or something. Is
yeah.
there any reason why they're so densely in this, like, as you say, this sort of honeycomb style?
Mm. Well, that's really interesting. Because Çatalhöyük is for sure uh, outside of the norm. Because typically, when groups got too large for themselves, to stay in one small place, they would split up, or they would, split into different smaller groups, or they would spread out a lot more. Um, but for some reason, and it is believed to be mostly a cultural reason, Çatalhöyük's people decided to live a lot more clustered together into these very like almost urban, like the way we see modern cities. This like same level of
Mm.
being on top of one another, very clustered together. Um, and at the time that where they were at their height, it's believed that they were a house-centered society, with the home containing everything for a family, from the hearth to their dead. And Çatalhöyük's focus on the home and inner community would have strengthened relations and lessened the kind of tensions you would feel by living so close together. Apparently, eventually, and this is something I did research on, I don't know this off the top of my head. Eventually, the city became a network of smaller neighborhoods that ensured the city was egalitarian and equally represented across itself. It clearly worked, as the city survived for a millennium before it collapsed. Unfortunately,
Mm.
it did collapse, apparently because of the introduction to social inequality and like a class system. So it worked while it was egalitarian. The second you introduced rich people, it all fell apart.
Yeah,
Yeah,
typical.
I know, right? One day we'll learn from history. Let's see. Okay, so most homes were accessed by holes and doors in the sides and ceilings of the houses, and were accessible through ladders and stairs.
Mm.
The flat mud brick rooftops, as you said, were sorry, so they were supported by logs that were laid across the ceilings of the homes, and they effectively worked as plazas and streets, with along with the openings of the ceilings being the only source of ventilation for air, hearth, and oven smoke. Interestingly, the people of Çatalhöyük buried their dead under their homes, specifically under their hearths, beds, and the platforms of the main rooms. Uh, and I
Mm.
think I have an example. I have some example images here because I thought that was very, very intriguing, for that to be
Yeah.
that kind of practice. So they were. We don't have to stay on it for too long, but it is very interesting. Uh,
So they were
mm.
like sedentary to the point that even their ancestors were on the same site as them. So it's like they literally,
Yeah,
as you say, it's like multiple layers of buildings built on top of each other. They were so sedentary that they stayed in the same site for 1,000 years.
yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I don't know for sure, so I'm just speculating, but that could also be a sign of their culture being so very house centric. It's you do not leave the house. You are
Mm.
buried in the house. You are born here, you'll die here.
Yeah,
That kind of
very
mentality.
interesting.
Yeah, so I don't know. But you'll actually see later on it's a little bit more it's a little bit of an epidemic, this practice. So
Oh.
yeah.
While we're on the topic
Mm.
of Çatalhöyük, though, I also wanted to just draw the comparison quickly because what it kind of reminds me of is the some of the Pueblo architecture
Oh, okay.
that we see in Chaco Canyon in I can't remember which state it is, but somewhere in the American Southwest.
Okay.
Um, there's in Chaco Canyon we see a lot of pit houses or kivas where the homes, a lot like Çatalhöyük, are accessible via an entrance that's usually in the ceiling, and on some of the larger buildings, there's a separate side entrance.
Mm.
So the whole house is constructed as like a pit in the ground, basically,
Oh,
with a
wow.
ladder that you climb down. So it's and also in Chaco Canyon, they are quite closely aggregated as well. Um, that's just a similarity I noticed. I'm sure there's no
Yeah, that's.
um,
Mm.
specific connection.
Oh, I'm sure, but it's really interesting that you have two completely separate groups that develop like such a similar style of building. So that's
Yeah,
worth looking into, just because it's interesting, if nothing else.
yeah,
Um,
they sort of converged on a similar design.
yeah. And I'm sure you've all seen what the next case study is going to be. We're going to be talking about Göbekli Tepe. Um, Göbekli Tepe is the oldest complex of buildings that we know of that was of the Neolithic era. Göbekli Tepe was unearthed in the Jurmis Mountains of southeastern Anatolia, coincidentally pretty close to Çatalhöyük. The majority of the structures found here are believed to be monumental communal buildings that were erected by hunter-gatherers in the pre-pottery Neolithic period around 9500 BCE. This is part of what makes Göbekli Tepe such a groundbreaking discovery, as we didn't think hunter-gatherer groups from this point in history were even capable of coordinating and building something so complex. It's currently
Mm.
believed that these monuments were used in connection with social events and or rituals. The most distinctive features of the site are these limestone T-shaped pillars that are interpreted as abstract depictions of the human form, and they rise up to about 5.5 meters tall. And I know you did say earlier what people tend to do when they don't know the purpose of something is to say it's for ritual purposes. So,
Uh-huh.
unfortunately, Göbekli Tepe is so recent a discovery that we can't really say for sure whether it was or wasn't. I certainly can't. I'm not even slightly professional enough to say that.
Mm.
But yeah, no. So we'll let the
Yeah.
professionals handle it and then just parrot what they tell us back in about 5 years.
Yeah. And I think it is worth bringing up this point that, like, these were not. I think the consensus is that the builders were semi-sedentary. Um,
Do you think so? Or, well,
from what I remember, they definitely
mm,
were. Because there's a little bit of a misconception that a culture has to be either hunter-gatherer, in which case they are probably nomadic and they live in these loosely associated bands,
mm,
um, or the culture is sedentary, architectural, urbanized. Like,
mm,
generally those sort of extremes of the spectrum are what most people are familiar with, but there's a lot of, especially around this time period, there's a lot of sort of mixing of these different characteristics. So I think, if I'm remembering correctly, the consensus is that the inhabitants of Göbekli Tepe were semi-sedentary, and so they. Um, I don't know whether, I can't remember. Is there any evidence of like domestic sites around Göbekli Tepe as well?
yes, there is actually. So, well,
Yeah.
they have discovered some structures very close to the monuments that currently are believed to be domestic buildings. So they could very absolutely have
Mm.
been semi sedentary. Because that's absolutely correct. Yeah, it's in the same way that evolution doesn't work where, monkey gave birth to a human and then it's just a switch is flipped and everyone stopped being hunter-gatherers and became sedentary farmers. It
Mm.
was very much like a state of yeah, they'd spend longer and longer periods of time in a certain place until eventually they would settle it completely. And yeah, that's something I
Mm.
actually need to look into a lot more because that's something I'm going to have to know about later. um,
And on sort of along those same lines, there's this there's a pretty common misconception that building structures or architecture in general is only seen in urbanized sedentary societies where or especially agricultural societies where there are lots of counterexamples of this, Göbekli Tepe being one of them.
mm,
um, but a site that I've been looking into recently is Poverty Point, which is in Bayou Mason in the Mississippi Basin.
mm,
And it's this very, very old, I can't remember exactly how old, but several millennia BC at least,
mm.
I think, um, that was quite possibly the largest settlement in North America at the time it was built.
Wow.
And there's not very much left of it at this point, but
Mm,
it is basically a series of semicircular earthen rings that stretch over a kilometer across. And there's this complex of earthen mounds at various points that um, line up with certain, like, I think the whole structure is built on an east to west axis. and then there are various mounds that mark certain like celestial alignments.
Mm.
And the largest of the mounds at the time it was built would have been over 20 meters tall. So this was a very big, very impressive monument, and it was built by hunter gatherers. Um, so yeah, I just thought that was some nuance that was worthy of bringing up.
No, for sure, absolutely. Thank you. Uh, okay. Um, there's not much else to say about Göbekli Tepe here. It's just that the fact that it is an incredible display of coordination, physical labor, craftsmanship, stoneworking, and architectural knowledge from what was either a nomadic society, a semi-sedentary society, as we've discussed, or one of the earliest proper sedimentary ones. Sedentary. Sediment is the stone stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, sedimentary is a type of rock.
Yeah, no. One of the earliest stone societies, if you can believe it. They were made entirely out of rock.
I'm I'm sure some of these stones that we're looking at are sedimentary. So
Yeah, for sure. I have said sedimentary multiple times this stream. Okay, never mind. Moving on, because I'm embarrassed. Uh, uh,
I mean, I
Jericho.
said that we were talking about agriculture at the beginning, so I think you're fine.
No, it's fine. So sedentary. So we have Jericho. Jericho is a city near Jerusalem and is among the oldest settlements we know of, and also the only one of our examples that is still settled today. Technically, maybe, kind of, under the same name. Uh, roughly 12,000 years after its initial settling, Jericho is believed to have been first inhabited before 9000 BCE, where the Ain es Sultan Spring became a regular camping ground for hunter-gatherer groups. Over time, these stays were extended into year-round habitation after the end of the Younger Dryas period. The first permanent settlement of Jericho, a society that has since been labeled pre-pottery A, were made up of small circular dwellings built with sun-dried clay. Hang on, I have a slide for this. This is pre-pottery A, maybe. I'll talk about the skull in a little bit. Were made up of small circular dwellings built with sun-dried clay and straw bricks using clay mortar and roofed with grass thatch. Each building measured about 5 meters across and had hearths built both in and outside the home. And interestingly enough, the people of Jericho also buried their dead under their homes as well, as they did later on in Çatalhöyük. Which is a very interesting thing. It is,
Yeah.
yeah. Do I use? I can't remember. Let me double check. Okay, so after about 1,000 years had passed, the site had developed into a 40,000 square meter large settlement, surrounded by a massive stone wall over 3.6 meters high and over a meter wide, with a man-made ditch circled around that wall as well. At the west of the wall stood a impressive 8.5 meter stone tower with an internal spiral staircase. You can see a model of it in the bottom corner here. It's not quite a tower as you think of it. The stairs specifically is what tripped me up when I was looking into it, because it does just go straight through it at an angle instead of spiraling or going up like a ladder. It's very interesting. And yeah, it was. So the defenses are fascinating to theorize about, but there's no real way to know for certain if they were designed against wild animals or to protect against opposing human groups. But despite their impressive tower, which was in use for almost 1,000 years after its construction, Jericho was later abandoned for several centuries for unknown reasons, and then was resettled in 6,800 BCE by a new group. This group, called Pre-Pottery B, pictured here. It was very hard to find pictures for these two sites, so I do apologize. You are just looking at dirt. I
It's
shouldn't say
interesting,
that.
but
It is very interesting dirt. Uh, let's see. This group was called Pre-Pottery B and built square homes made of mud bricks on stone foundations with red or pink floors made out of lime. Some impressions of mats made of reeds or rushes have been happily preserved in these settlements as well. And although none of these era's buildings have been excavated in their entirety, it is thought that they were communal, with several buildings clustered around a central clay-floored courtyard, with the one largest building serving as the living quarters. But don't worry, this new culture also buried their dead under the floors. With several collective
Wow.
burials being found at the site. Much later on, closer to 4000 BCE, Jericho's buildings would adopt plaster floors, which was characteristic of the local West Syrian and Middle Euphrates groups of the age. And then you can essentially just keep going because there's just settlings after settling after settling after group after group after group. So, to pop back into the skulls here for a second, I do not know if these skulls belong to pre-pottery A or pre-pottery B, because they are mentioned in descriptions of both. And I don't know. I think it's maybe pre-pottery A, but then pre-pottery B also had a skull cult. So I do not know because they will not tell me. The internet failed me. And that is all. They are very creepy to look at. I said I had a hard time finding
Yeah.
images for this section. Every single time I was looking up anything about like Jericho pre-pottery A, and all of the results would just be the skulls. There's nothing quite like getting jump scared by 1,000-year-old plaster skulls while you're trying to do
Yeah.
research at like 11 p.m. So that was my experience. If you have anything to add on to that.
I mean, no, not particularly. Yeah, that's just very cool that a single place can be inhabited semi-consistently for that long.
Mm-mm. Oh, and the reason we have the image up in the corner here is because that is actually a brick pulled from pre-pottery B settlement. And what they would do is they would put thumbprint inlays into the brick that meant it would better hold the mortar that they were using, and then it would like
Ah,
so that extra texture added to like make the building more stable, which is
yeah.
interesting. And it was also one of the only images I found, so there really was not much to it. Oh, and now we are back at Teotihuacan. Yes? Score out of 10 for how I
Teotihuacan.
said that? Teotihuacan?
Yeah. Yeah, the HU is usually just pronounced like a W, but other than that, yeah, pretty good.
Teotihuacan. Teotihuacan. But it's like a
Teotihuacan. Also in
Hawakan.
Spanish, it's Teotihuacan. They put the
Teotihuacan.
stress on the last syllable. But
Mm-mm.
in Nahuatl, it would be Teotihuacan.
Mm-mm-mm. So I did
Well,
write. Oh, sorry.
I could, no, I was just going to say, I could go on a very long tangent about how the original pitch accent system of Nahuatl was misconstrued by the Spanish settlers, but that would be a whole other conversation that has
Oh
nothing to do
no.
with what we're talking about.
No one expects the Spanish discussion. Oh god, how old is that meme? Actually, no, don't tell me. Um, uh, right, so I did say Jericho is the oldest settlement that's still inhabited. That's not technically true. You can very clearly see people living around the. I believe that's the. I knew this when I knew this when I put the images up. It's the Moon
Pyramid of the
Temple with
Sun?
the Road of the Dead, isn't it?
Oh,
Uh, the big image,
I mean, possibly. I think you know
and
better
then
than me.
oh no, if I don't know and you
I
don't
know
know.
the big one is the Pyramid of the Sun.
I knew this when I was putting the slides up, and I said, okay, don't forget, you have to remember one is one and one is the other, and I've forgotten. That is the Road of the Dead. I do remember that.
Yeah,
Mm.
that one I'm pretty sure about. I'm fairly certain the biggest of the pyramids is the Pyramid of the Sun,
Ah, okay. I'm pretty sure
but
that's
I could
the
be wrong. So, chat, help us.
chat help. It really is getting worse and worse. I I don't know why it's doing that. It didn't do that when I was like testing it out the first time. It's just for the stream. It's Have I forgotten to turn off the marker?
What marker? Everything looks fine on my end, for what it's worth.
Does it? It's going all. Huh.
Okay, well, now it's acting up.
Ah, now it's okay. See, the trick was to have the uh, spirit
Right.
bomb. Ah, okay, okay, okay. Okay, anyway, back to it. I think we've
Yes.
temporarily fixed the collapse of the of the slideshow. Um,
Excellent.
right, so Teotihuacan is probably an example of the maximum level of development achievable by a city that did not work metal to make tools. The city, which existed for nearly a millennium between 200 BCE and 750 ACE, is believed to have reached 100,000 or even 200,000 inhabitants. Although even conservative estimates of 60,000 to 80,000 would make it one of the largest cities of its era. The most
Mhm.
impressive structures from the city are undoubtedly the three large step pyramids: the Pyramid of the Sun, the Pyramid of the Moon, and the oh uh, Ciudadela,
Uh,
uh,
I don't
Ciudadela.
actually know. Yes, I don't know where the emphasis would be put in
Mm.
the Spanish Ciudadela,
I
something like that.
shall,
It's the citadel.
yes, the Citadel. The plaster on their surfaces, adorned with frescoes that unfortunately have not survived, uh, well, were adorned with frescoes that unfortunately have not survived. Beyond these were raised platforms placed along the Avenue of the Dead. There we go, that's the Avenue of the Dead. The different constructions of the houses also testify to significant social stratification, with the homes of the elite being larger and richly frescoed. I've been told the people in the chat who are cats are greatly enjoying the the highlighter, the laser pointer. Yeah, so
Mhm.
this is an example of the kind of frescoes and decorations that were seen in the buildings. Um, it's got that classic red lining. It's got the same heads. You can see the feathered serpent. I believe that's the feathered
Mhm.
serpent here. Um,
Yes, that is the. I think is the feathered serpent motif originates in Teotihuacan. That a lot of other Mesoamerican cultures incorporate into their mythology in
mm,
various ways.
okay. I love the concept of the feathered serpent because I know it's almost completely unknown what it was actually the god of or why it was worshipped. Simply because it was
Yeah,
so well known what it was worshipped for that nothing ever got written down. And that's
yeah.
so cool to me. Yeah, and you can see here he is again. Uh, I do not know who the other two are, but I assume they are very important. Um, anyway.
Yeah, I don't know either.
And then this is a model recreation of the Citadel as well. I'm going to try it again, the Ciudadela. I don't know.
Hmm.
It's fine. You can make fun of me all you want. It's fine. I deserve it. uh,
I thought that was pretty good.
oh, thank you. Okay. Uh, right. So, moving up into the five principles of architecture, we basically have it's five, but if you go to different schools, if you talk to different professors and well, professors, I didn't talk to any professors unfortunately, but depending on who you ask and what sites you're on and articles you're reading, there are anything from 5 to 7 design principles of architecture. But from what I've seen, they are more or less the same. They just tend to break down what would have been 1 point into 2 points or 3 points. So today we are going to be focusing on balance, emphasis, proportion and size, rhythm, and movement. And this is stuff that also gets covered when you start learning art. So if anyone's getting war flashbacks, I know I certainly am. Uh, and if we start here, we can talk about balance. Balance in architecture specifically refers to the distribution of visual weight and the interaction and relation of a building's different elements to one another in order to create a sense of stability and order. This can be achieved through symmetry, asymmetry, or radial balance. So what we have here is an example of symmetry. So if you cut it straight down the middle, it's exactly the same on either side. And that is seen as beautiful because symmetrical. And a lot of
Mm.
the way humans perceive beauty is by simply looking at symmetry. If you look at another person's face, you find that the more symmetrical faces are considered more attractive. Symmetrical balance is the equal mirroring of elements on either side of a central axis, as I've said. Humans, yeah, I've literally also written that down. Humans relate symmetry to beauty, and this is true in architecture as well. The symmetry of window placements or the arrangement of rooms on either side of a hallway, the gables under pitched rooftops, and the placement of a hearth at the center of a room all add to a building or room's symmetry. The passive creation of symmetry in man-made and organic structures create a sense of calm and wholeness in those who view them. And it's a big reason why symmetry has been a major feature in architecture throughout history. The longhouses, you cut them straight down the center, same on either side. uh,
Mm.
Maybe not on the inside, but definitely on the outside. And then,
I am having an idea.
oh, yes.
Oh, sorry.
Uh,
Yeah, I won't go on. This has the potential to spiral into a very big tangent, so I'll keep it brief. But just an idea if anyone wants to pursue this. If you had a species that was asymmetrical, like I'm
mm.
thinking like a fiddler crab, for example, where the males have one really tiny claw and one ridiculously huge claw,
Okay.
then maybe that would affect how they perceive beauty or aesthetics in structures as well. Maybe
Mm.
they would have a completely different view of what a
Oh, for sure.
beautiful structure would look like.
Mm.
Maybe they intentionally build them to be asymmetrical. Yeah,
Mm.
someone else follow that line of thought. We'll press on.
I'm being told in the chat that everyone can hear the cricket. I am very sorry. I can't stop him. If you don't mind, his name is Jerry. If that helps. Um,
Oh, good.
I dislike him greatly, but I can't stop him. So, but no, yeah, that's an.
I think it's a
Mm.
nice ambience.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I don't. But what you gonna do?
Oh,
Damn, Jerry! Don't you hate your neighbors that keep shrieking? But that's an excellent point on asymmetry, because that brings us to asymmetrical balance, which is the distribution of elements to create equilibrium on either side of a building without using mirroring. So if you want to use an example for this, I didn't find a visual example for this, but a church is often displaying a form of asymmetry by having its there's an official word for it. It's the spires, the tower of the church.
the steeple.
Steeple, yes, that's it, absolutely, thank you. But by having a steeple on the one side, it creates a sense of imbalance, but it's not necessarily unattractive or seen as wrong. It's simply a very distinctive shape, and it creates a form of asymmetrical balance. And it still manages to balance the different elements of it that create a visually different but similar visual weight. They often accomplish this by having a smaller steeple on the other side as well. So because you're seeing two repeating elements, but one is larger than the other, you're creating asymmetry, but it doesn't feel out of place. It doesn't feel wrong. And that's repetition, which is also very helpful. Right, so asymmetry in buildings creates a less formal looking construction, but still has a strong balance and appeal. And that also brings us to radial balance. Radial balance is most commonly used in the creation of a symmetrical floor plan rather than the view of a building from the street. For example, round, octagonal, or square floor plan layouts can have that symmetry, only horizontally, in turn also creating a hierarchy within the rest of the building, as all the other elements of the building and rooms in the building tend to circulate around the core radial balance of that main element, unless there's more than one, in which case you can have interesting ways that those rooms and weighting can sort of intersect with one another. And that's pretty complex. It's probably not something you're going to find outside of circles, I think, are the most basic ones you find. Like,
Mm.
that's where you get the rondels, that's where you get Göbekli Tepe is in in a circle. And that, I think, is kind of the extent of what we have. I don't know, maybe there's a lot more complex ones, but that's from what I understand that simplicity is more Neolithic. And then we move
Mm.
on to emphasis. So, emphasis in architecture refers to the hierarchy of decorative or functional elements of a building in order to create a scaling order of importance across a structure, culminating in one or more focal points within or outside of the building. Focal points are simply the points that your eye is drawn to first. So I could say the focal point here is the door down here, or I could even say it is the clock up here. You can see this is a church. That's also our example of asymmetrical balance. And
Hmm.
yeah, and they've created emphasis by having these two parts on either side leading up, 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 up into the spire. And honestly, I could even say this whole section here is the part that is emphasized the most. But if I had to pick a focal point, I would probably say it was the doorway, since it is surrounded by the most of the heavier elements. And then this is quite easy because then you can see everything is leading up to the main entryway.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's also an interesting use
Good.
of repetition here as well on either side. Sorry, carry on.
Sorry?
Sorry, were you going to say something?
I was just going to add or ask, I guess,
Mm.
at what point is there, like, is there generally speaking only one focal point, I guess, is the short version?
Uh, Not particularly. Because buildings are 3D structures, you can create multiple focal points without them being the main focal point. The main focal point is often the front door, or it can
Mm.
be a particularly interesting element of the building. But yeah, there can be more ones depending on what angle you're viewing the building at, or if you're inside the building as well, a certain room will be designed with a focal point, whether that be through the pattern in the floorwork,
Okay.
or again, the main entryway is often the one that people are most drawn to visually. And yeah, no, so it ultimately depends on, I suppose, what maybe the people building it would think is the most important. For us, usually front door, most important, that's the one you go into.
Hmm.
But it completely depends. There's the great thing about art is that there's a lot of like flexibility.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure.
So, for example, the crab people, maybe they don't enjoy the entryways as much. They want to put more of the emphasis on the most asymmetrical side of the building.
Yeah, on this
Mm,
weird one section of the building that kind of juts out to the side asymmetrically, and
mm,
that's the
mm,
bit that
mm.
everything leads up to.
Yeah, exactly. Uh, right. So emphasis can be achieved a number of different ways. You can do it through contrasting colors of different materials, and that's also something that you find in art as well. Very commonly, you get to use color theory, etc., etc. Yeah, so by using color on or around or leading up to the focal point, you are creating emphasis, such as a bright red front door. We can, of course, focus on color as a way to also assist in the final look and feel of a building based on more general color theory as well. The matter of what color these homes were depended on uh, the matter of what colors these homes were depended on the technology and materials that were available, as well as the culture the buildings belonged to. For example, Çatalhöyük's buildings had inner walls lined with pristine, smooth white plaster, as we've said before, and often were painted with murals depicting animals, humans, and hunting scenes, as well as abstract shapes in warmer reds and earthen colors. We also find that, at least in later cultures, bright colors were consistently welcomed when the money and materials were available. No matter what period
Mm.
of history you live in, nobody really wants to be surrounded by bland browns, greys, or whites at all time.
Mm.
Another way that you can create emphasis is through lighting. Not only through the placement of windows to shine inside the building, but also by angling or placing the building in accordance to where the sun might rise or set. And that's actually really interesting in a lot of, not a lot of, but there's a few examples of specific Greek and Roman architecture that have I forgot the name of the building that I wanted to reference, and so I couldn't find it to give you an image or an example of it. But there is a building that is designed so that the entry is facing, I believe it's the Star of Venus, or a very specific star
Mm.
for when it rises at a certain time of the year. And it's very fascinating and it's so interesting. And I wanted to talk about it so bad, but I couldn't remember the name. And now chat's going to tell me what it is, and I'm going to feel very embarrassed. Anyway, scale is also an important tool for emphasis. The bigger certain parts of a building are in relation to the rest of the building, the more weight and emphasis they hold. And this can be very clearly seen in our tower here. Differentiation is also a great way to mark out focal points in the building using any of the elements we've covered, whether it be color, scale, or a unique design amongst repeating patterns. all of those will immediately draw the eye to it and mark it out as a point of interest. For example, if your building is designed entirely out of rectangular or very angular structures and design details, putting a circle anywhere in the building is immediately going to draw the eye to it because it is something that is different.
Mm.
Mm. And then we move on to proportion and size. Size and proportion in architecture is a matter of limitations, with it more often than not depending on the size of the property and the budget of the homeowners. And this is just, of course, in modern architecture. But in an ideal world, using the human scale and experience to dictate the size of a home and the proportions of it should. Uh, but in an ideal world, you should be using the human scale and human experience to dictate the size of a home and the proportions of it as a priority. In some cases, this is accomplished using geometry, geometric patterns, and the golden ratio and rectangle are often used to study floor plans and elevations. Unfortunately, though, this is something architects spend entire careers studying and understanding, and is a little bit difficult to cover in its entirety here. So for now, we will mention it as just a brief overview, as something that is extremely important to the practice, but not something I even understand enough to be able to cover in its entirety. And if you'll allow me to go on a little bit of a tangent here.
Sure.
In history, it often determines how impressive we view a building to be, especially when it comes to the Neolithic. For example, why were the longhouses so impressive? It's because they were big. Why is Stonehenge so impressive? It's because it was big. And maybe also British. But domestic buildings were the most common across history, so with them come some ground rules. Typically, with the exception of a longhouse, Neolithic domiciles were made relatively on a smaller scale, due to a lack of modern technology when building as well as the cost of labor and materials were very high. In our slightly more isolating modern day, smaller living spaces can be associated with poorer mental health, with a home having a total floor area of less than 13 meters squared, leading to increased anxiety and a poorer quality of life for the homeowners, particularly if they are caregivers. At least, again, as we've measured in today's society, where we also have to factor in the separation of generational homes, lack of communal living, and the fact that most modern homes come with all the living facilities that a person needs, such as indoor plumbing and a full, complete kitchen, which was not always a guarantee in Neolithic homes. Not the indoor plumbing part, the indoor kitchen. Uh, um, and it largely depended on their culture whether or not they would have access to indoor cooking facilities. In fact, since most of the chores and activities of a settlement were done outside the house and amongst a well-known local community, small homes might not have had even affected their mental health significantly, if at all. And in civilizations developed enough to have specialized labor, work that was done indoors was probably done by the people who could afford nicer, larger homes. Yeah, so
So
that.
that kind of good. Oh, sorry. I was just going to say that kind of goes back to the Teotihuacan example.
Mm,
Um, if they were spending the majority of their time doing things outside, then yeah, I can imagine there wouldn't be as much of a pressure to make sure that their dwellings were spread apart from each other.
yeah, for sure. Um, yeah, no, so absolutely. It's I mean, the thing is that there's no surefire way to say for certain if it would or would not impact your mental health significantly. That's just, I looked at a few studies and I know that the cramped living conditions of Çatalhöyük was
Mm.
not really a major factor in their fall or and it clearly worked. They did last a long time. So
Mm.
it is, yeah, so you can make a lot of assumptions, but there's absolutely no way to know 100% for sure this is why it happened, this is why it didn't happen. Um,
Sure.
so yeah, I can just give you the best of what I got. Uh, Moving on to rhythm. All architecture follows a type of rhythm, which in the case of buildings refers to the pattern and flow created through the arrangement of the design elements we've covered here. This is also where you can apply all the styles of architecture in order to create a single visual whole. This is where all the three that we've covered so far can come together in order to create this sense of interplay and rhythm within a single building. Uh, Pattern and flow can be made through the placement of whole buildings into specific shapes or concentrations. The entrances and windows within the buildings, additional structural elements like arches, pillars, domes, facades, or simply the reliefs, sculptures, colors, and paintings adorning them. Often rhythm is made through symmetry, as in the gables under the pitched roof of a longhouse, or the repetition of a motif, like the skulls and horns in Çatalhöyük. Repetition in architecture is additionally uh, a way to create rhythm. I've said that already. But yeah, as you can see, it's rhythm is a difficult thing to define in architecture because when you hear the word rhythm, you often think of music instead.
Hmm.
But it is honestly just as simple as it's a visual rhythm, and it's something that you have to have a little bit of a sense for. But there are a lot of
Mm.
shortcuts you can use to sort of logic your way into creating that type of rhythm, primarily through the principles and design elements that we've talked about. And then we have movement. And movement is similar to, but not quite the same as rhythm. Movement refers to how architecture can move a person through its design, how it can guide them through spaces both inside and out. It's this sweet spot where every principle we've covered can come together to create movement, interest, and most importantly, life to a building. Using every single tool an architect has, they can combine layers of detail, quality craftsmanship, materials, textures, and playing with light and shadow to create the final perfect unison of construct. And this is the place where form and function meet. So you don't only have this beautiful piece of art, you also have a very functional building. It's kind of in
Mm.
the example here where it's this is an example of these are pillars, this is designed to keep the roof up. It's a very functional element to the structure, but it is also a part of the beauty of it. It's part of the space, it's part of the design. And then here specifically, it's not only this interesting flowing piece that sort of guides your eye up the stairway, it also is just a staircase as well. Um,
Hmm.
so I hope that comes through okay. I hope that makes sense. If you have any questions.
Yeah,
Mm,
I think so. I yeah, I think I get the general idea. Although, of course, I don't have like
mm.
I do not have a well developed eye for these things, but I think I get it.
No, it's okay. It's okay. It's yeah. It's tricky talking about this from like a more artistic perspective, because it is something that you do train your eye for, and that's why I don't really fault anyone who wants to take more inspiration from real world structures. I know the cricket's loud chat. It's okay.
Jerry's really going at it.
Yeah, no, Jerry, my goat. Someone said it's easy. Um, Damn you, Jerry. Um, so yeah, it's something that you do develop an eye for over time. And again, I don't fault anyone who wants to sort of borrow a little bit of real life architecture in order to make their own structures feel more real. Simply because it's such a difficult thing to just be able to like get on the spot. Um,
Mhm.
uh, but yeah, no, it's worth trying for sure, 100%. That's why we're here.
Yeah,
Mm. Oh, actually, I have a bonus tangent where we can also talk about shape.
cool.
Haha, I have done a very good job of organizing these. Um, yeah, so we're going to be talking about modern versus Neolithic knowledge, and we are going to be including shape into this because it is mostly about the difference between different Neolithic buildings' shapes specifically. And that's the point is that everything we've talked about here refers to all that the craft of architecture has developed over thousands of years with our five principles. It took generations of creatives and scholars to condense all of this information into five basic principles, and it took generations more to establish 100 more details of the practice that we can't even begin to cover here. When stepping back and remembering that we're talking about Neolithic architecture, we can't exactly hold these standards towards every building. They cannot play with lighting and windows and frescoes in the same way that we can today. Their monuments and buildings, when created with purpose and intention, are still incredible, with a lot of the basic principles being applied to them. But that is what makes them incredible for the time. The fact that their builders had a grasp of those principles in the first place during a point in history when, as far as we understand it, they were being developed for the first time independently across the world. So while none of it is quite on the scale of what we would consider mind-blowing today, for the time they were absolutely majestic. Uh,
Hmm.
if a
And
little bit
some of them are
arrogant.
still pretty mind blowing.
Yeah, I think so, but I understand it's also like we're looking at relatively small structures compared to like I don't know. Well, maybe not. I don't know. That's pretty big. Göbekli Tepe. You can see the audience in the
Yeah.
back there. Right. So moving into shape, we are looking at round versus rectangular. So um, in architecture, there is, of course, also shape. The shape of a building lends itself to the final form, intention, and visual appeal of the construction. From oval arch ceiling entryways to round spiral towers to circular living rooms to long rectangular dining halls. Much of the typical examples of Neolithic architecture, when it comes to settlements, relied on round huts, square and rectangular huts, and longhouses. According to some architects, round huts and homes were, and in many places still are, believed to be more comfortable, harmonized with nature and community, material and energy efficient, and perceived as safer. They were shaped after elements of nature, such as caves, nests, and tree trunks. Whereas, on the opposite side of the spectrum, square and rectangular buildings seem to be perceived as easier to build and more stable, with straight lines and right angles making construction much simpler. After all, in a rectangular house, all you have to do to add a new room is build 3 more walls and cut out a door. You can join buildings together to make one large home or split them up into small apartments. And to plan out cities, all you have to do is work on a simple grid pattern. So typically, you can assume that round houses will be developed in more rural, sparsely populated settlements, while rectangular ones will be developed in more condensed areas and be more widespread as a result.
Mm.
But of course,
That's,
sorry.
I was going to say that's very interesting,
Mm.
and a very useful guideline. Though I do have a counterexample, at least I think, if memory serves me correctly.
Oh, sure.
Again, the Pueblo dwellings at Chaco Canyon, even though they are quite densely packed together, they are mostly circular.
Mm. That's very cool. Yeah, because it's also like it's not a strict rule. I mean, even our first example of longhouses, despite being rectangular, they were uh rather they were placed rather far away, and they were um
Hmm.
I'm sorry, I'm getting the chat likes Jerry. Um Crooked stream win. Um but yeah, the fact that we can kind of use that as a shorthand is helpful if you need it. Um,
Hmm.
right. Moving on, we're going to be talking about Neolithic building materials because there's quite a few of them, um, but enough so that we can go through all of them right now. Um, so we'll start with thatch. Thatching is the practice of using dry vegetation such as straw, reeds, sedge, rushes, heather, or palm branches in order to construct a waterproof shelter, used in slanted roofing as to allow water and snow to slide naturally off the fibers, as well as in walls in order to provide insulation. Similarly, thatch roofing's inner layers can also provide insulation the thicker it is thatched. Um, Moving on to wood. Wood was a very common material until modern times. It can be used in various ways, from rough logs to planks, and almost all buildings use it at least in their framework, if not in the entire structure. Even nomads needed wooden poles for their tents. Uh,
Yeah.
mm. Then moving to stone. Stone is, of course, the most basic of the building blocks when it comes to ancient architecture. At their earliest and most basic, they were simple loose field stones piled into a dry stone wall without the use of mortar or plaster, which would be later developments of the period. Stone walls, floors, and buildings are excellent at keeping internal temperatures cool, but unless they are insulated by mortar or plaster, they are very bad at retaining heat within the home. As stones are inefficient and labor intensive to move these types of As stones are inefficient and labor intensive to move, these types of stonework buildings so early in their history were mostly found locally, with the small exceptions of monuments like Stonehenge that were built right at the end of the late Neolithic, whose 42 smaller bluestones were sourced in the Preseli Hills, Wales, while the structure itself was built in what is now Salisbury, South England. Did I pronounce that right?
Mm. Salisbury? Yeah.
And the Preseli Hills?
That I couldn't tell you.
Oh, thank
But
God. Okay. If neither of
Stonehenge is in Wiltshire, I know that much.
mm, mm, mm.
I have driven past it before, but I've not actually been to see it properly.
Oh, that's cool. It's a how big is it in person
I
while
was
you're
very
driving
young at
past?
the time. Um, so yeah, I can't remember, but
Ah,
certainly impressively big for the time.
mm, mm, mm. Oh, for sure, for sure. I mean,
And
it's
while we're on the
mm,
point,
yes.
just wanted to bring up as well that I don't know why Chaco Canyon keeps coming to mind today, but
Mm,
it reminds me that in the construction of a lot of the buildings at Chaco Canyon, um, there was lumber used,
mm,
but Chaco Canyon is in the middle of a desert or a very dry, arid steppe, at least,
mm,
and there are no stands of trees nearby.
mm.
So they must have sourced the trees from little pockets of woodland that occur like further up the canyon, which would have been like at least 50 to 100 miles away. So,
Whoa.
kind of like with the Stonehenge situation, they
Mm,
are sourcing their primary building materials from somewhere very far away,
mm. I
which
mean,
I just think is cool.
that is very cool. And typically, the way that they would translate that, I don't know for this specific example, but I do know typically the most common way to transport material, like heavier materials over long distances, was to use the rolling log method, where they would just,
Mm,
yeah, they would roll it along a series of logs and then just place new logs in front of them as they went. Um, I believe that was it, right? And then
yeah,
yeah, and then that was like the go-to method for quite a while. I
yeah,
think even no, I won't say for sure. No, I was going to say even after the invention of the wheel, but I'm not sure about that one. um,
yeah, I couldn't tell you.
yeah, we'll stick in our lane. Uh, okay, moving on to clay. Clay is very important for the Neolithic period. It was one of the most prolific building materials, and aside from being the material that made mud bricks, clay also served many other roles in the creation of the home and in everyday lives of Neolithic cultures. Clay-based dab, daub, was
Mm,
used to insulate and smooth over the walls and was used as a building material in everything from floor platforms to outdoor courtyards to an adhesive to hold the roof thatching in place. And then we get to the most exciting one, dung. While it may not seem like an appealing idea, dung was extremely important material in ancient times and even in some places in modern day Africa as well. South Africa specifically.
mm,
I've seen a lot of buildings that are made using this particular method. But they are also found at archaeological sites like Çatalhöyük. Dung combined with clay could be used to create an insulating layer and stabilize the mud structures that were already built. Then we get plaster uh, with more skulls. During the Neolithic, there were two popular types of plaster. The first was made from gypsum, and the second from limestone. In order to make plaster, clay had to be mixed with gypsum, lime, or in the case of Çatalhöyük, a chalky marl, and water, turned into a wet paste and then used as plaster for construction, as we saw in Çatalhöyük. Plaster worked as a flexible material that, once hardened, was tougher than regular mud bricks and could create a smooth finish to the home. That, coupled with its off-white color, meant it was also very popular aesthetically. And now we get to construction methods. In the Neolithic,
mm.
as people steadily became more sedentary, a whole series of construction techniques began to develop that remained in vogue for many millennia, especially for the poorest dwellings. Starting off with dry stone. Dry stone is a very common method used to build megalithic structures, dividing walls or stables. With this technique, walls are built by stacking stones on top of each other so they don't shift. The larger the stones, the more difficult they are to shift, which is why we have megalithic structures whose stones can weigh tons. While examples of more common architecture are more difficult to find. The stones can be collected as they are or quarried from rock beds in square shapes. An example of the latter, although not a Neolithic one, is the Egyptian pyramids. And then we get stones with binders. In many cases, it's preferable to bind these stones together using a binding substance. The most common in the Neolithic period, but used for a very long time afterwards, was simply mud, which we've been calling a mud mortar over the course of this video. Well, stream. Later, however, a real mortar and then cement was developed and used. The stones can also be rough or squared, with various installation methods available across different cultures. However, this is a very long discussion. We could talk for ages about mortar. So we will just leave it here and move on. Next is wattle and daub. I've been pronouncing it daub in my head for so long that that's how my brain does it. So
I think it's daub.
Is it
I think
daub?
that's the standard pronunciation.
I hope so. It's the tragedy of being a kid who read too much is that I pronounce some words very, very wrong.
Yeah, I've
Yeah.
been there.
While not used in any of the example sites we listed above, I don't think that's true. I think I mentioned wattle and daub for the longhouses. Anyway, well, maybe not used in any of the example sites we listed above. Wattle and daub is still a technique that has been used since the Neolithic period, dating back to at least 6000 BCE. Wattle and daub is a practice that carries across multiple cultures and locations, from the Native American Mississippians to the African Asante people. The process involves two steps: creating the wattle and the daub. Wattle is a wall or fence that is made by weaving thin branches, reeds or vines between upright wooden stakes. And daub is a mixture of ingredients ranging from clay to a mix of dung, clay, soil, and straw, or even a plaster. And you can see that that's there. And so it's essentially the ease of building a wooden structure with the insulation and stability of creating a clay or mud brick building. Next, we get debarked trunks. So this is a little bit like the log cabins of American settlers. By peeling the trunks, the wood rots slower, and mud can be used to seal in the drafts. The upper part of the trunk is hollowed out to create a depression that fits over the next trunk, and the logs are stacked on top of each other, tying them together to form a single structure. This building method is very common in many places in the Northern Hemisphere specifically, where populations are sparse and forests dominate the landscape, making wood a very readily available material. And then we get wooden planks. When wood is a common but still limited material, culture might prefer to use wooden planks mounted on frames. Nails are, of course, vital to this technique, but very sturdy houses can still be built by shaping the planks with a hammer and chisel and fitting them together in something similar to joints, as it's called in carpentry. Before the invention of saws, the best way to create planks was to find the grain in the wood and follow it by driving wedges into it until it split almost cleanly. So that is how a lot of Neolithic plank structures were created at the time. And then we get pressed earth, which is a very fascinating way to create a structure. There are many ways to build walls with tamped earth, but the essence is always the same: tamping the earth with a hammer or stick, one layer on top of the other. It's a very common technique that's still used today in certain parts of the world, and while it might seem a bit crude, even sections of the Great Wall of China are built this way. While it can be left bare, it's generally best to also waterproof it with a layer of plaster on top. And it's so interesting because you can even see the different layers of earth, which I actually originally thought I was being shown the wrong kinds of images, because I thought, oh no, that's bricks.
You could call it sedimentary.
Yeah. Finally, the sedimentary society.
I don't know if that actually counts as sedimentary in geology, but I know sedimentary rocks are made up of layers, and that's what it reminded me of.
This is tragic. And then, of course, we get to the most famous example of Neolithic architecture. Well, materials, the mud brick. The mud brick was a fascinating development during the Neolithic period, and it was a practice that we can trace back to both ancient Mesopotamia and the entirety of the Indus Valley civilization. Mud bricks are made by pressing together mud, straw, and sometimes dung, the latter two to hold the clay together and prevent it from crumbling. They would also be used to make ceilings by using wooden posts laid atop the across the top of the walls to support the weight, and then placing the bricks over the posts and using clay mortar to smooth over the surface. While firing bricks was a rarer practice until the Chalcolithic, the creation of both fired and non-fired adobe bricks are a technique typical of arid territories, where the availability of wood was generally more scarce, although it has also been exported to territories where wood is more available, such as Spain or Sardinia. It's a technique typical of more arid lands, where wood availability, again, is generally more scarce, although the practice has also been. Oh, I repeated the same line. Unfortunate. This is not only because the need of alternative building materials. This is not only because of the need of an alternative building material for the area, but also because if wood is scarce, baking bricks itself as a practice becomes more expensive and impractical. Both these adobe bricks, as well as the later the tamped earth method, in addition to requiring a waterproofing layer, also require a wooden, or more commonly a stone, base in the floor to prevent water from weakening the clay and causing it to collapse. And these bases are usually the only recognizable things that remain of the buildings when they do eventually collapse. So that's pretty
Mhm.
cool, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, uh, and then I love these examples because they are obviously not Neolithic examples, but it is very, very interesting that they are still so
Yeah.
commonly seen in certain parts of the world today. Uh,
Yeah. Very good.
yeah. Okay. And then, of course, we get baked bricks. Compared to unfired adobe bricks, baked bricks are not only less susceptible to weathering, but also have much better structural properties. With sufficiently strong binders, they can be used to create much more complex architectural structures. They were less widespread in the Neolithic period than wood and stone, but they were nevertheless not completely unknown. And in the remains of the Seskelo culture, we find the use of baked bricks there as well. As in the case of stone masonry, there are various ways to install baked bricks, but it again would take a bit too long to explain them all here. But it is interesting, so it does mean you can create more complex structures with fired bricks as opposed to adobe bricks. And that in itself, I think, is useful information, even if it was a bit of
Yeah.
a later development for the time. And then we get different types of structures. Uh, listed here.
While
Oh, yes.
just if I can quickly jump in before we move on, I just wanted the only well, there are two things I thought I might bring up. Um, Number one, a construction method that I've always thought was really, really cool is rock cut architecture, where the structure, instead of being composed of lots of different stones, it is all like cut out of a single block of stone.
Mm,
Um, there are some buildings, none of which I can actually remember what they're called, in India that are
mm,
like this. In certain parts of India, there's a very rich tradition of rock cut architecture. And it
mm.
always struck me as such an inefficient way of making a building, of literally carving an entire building into a big, like, rock face. But um, doing some reading, number one, apparently, in these parts of India, there are traditions of using caves and other natural spaces in rock as places of worship and
Mm.
other like culturally important places. So that might have been the impetus for wanting to like carve a structure directly into the rock. And
Yeah.
also, um, in a lot of cases, the pieces of rock that are removed from the rock face in the construction of the rock built structure,
Mm.
they are then quarried and taken off to build other more typical rock buildings in other places. So it's not like all of this rock is just going to waste. It's a way of generating more resources. In some cases, it might have actually even the practice of this rock cut architecture might have originated from quarrying for stone in the first place. So it's all reusing the same material, getting as much value as you can basically out of the materials and practices that you're using,
Mm.
um, which I thought was kind of cool. And the second one was that um, I know that in some of the Inuit cultures, um, they use snow for insulation, um,
Yeah.
which I always thought was very counterintuitive when I was a kid because snow is cold.
Mm.
Um, but um, it has the same sort of properties um, as, or it can have the same properties as like soil when it comes to insulation,
Mm.
because just air is not very good at conducting heat or cold by extension, and so therefore, even though if you're in an igloo or some other structure that has you know is reinforced with snow, it can still stay comparatively warm.
Mm.
So like there are some structures, can't remember where or who they were built by, but they have a kind of similar to the wattle and daub thing. Kind of, they
Mm.
have a scaffolding made of whalebone, and then they have
Wow.
snow built around that.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's
Mm.
quite a specific construction method, but I think it's kind of fun.
Mm. Mm. No, it's super cool. The only thing I know about igloos specifically is that apparently when fires are lit within the structure, it melts the inner walls just enough for them to
Mm.
refreeze, and then apparently that it better insulates the building as well, which is pretty cool. I
Oh yeah, that's very cool.
Yeah, apparently it gets like really hot in them as well. So I don't know.
Mm.
I'd love to like actually try and like spend a night in one day.
This has never occurred to me before, but I wonder, maybe someone in chat knows. Has there ever been a culture that uses pykrete, which is basically like sawdust mixed with water and then frozen? Because for complex reasons that I don't understand, when you freeze the bits of wood, they take on concrete-like properties, and apparently it's harder naturally than both ice and wood.
Oh
Um,
wow.
so it would make for a really good building material, I think, but I don't know if any culture has ever actually done that before. But that's kind of a fun idea.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't. We'll we'll wait for chat to catch up. Come on, guys. Uh, the IKEA culture. Oh no. Okay. Um, would you like to wait or should we move forward?
Um, we can move on while chat catches up, I think.
I feel like there wouldn't be enough sawdust until the industrial era. Nah, sawdust is so
Yeah.
easy to produce, isn't it?
I don't know. If you have saws, it certainly is. I guess it would take some effort to like grind
Mm-hmm.
up wood before that point.
That would be cool. A machine just for grinding wood, no other purpose.
Yeah.
A very, very big mortar.
Yeah, like a giant mortar and pestle.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry, mortar and pestle. I was trying to
Mm.
remember the second one, the second part of the name. uh, what should those who are supposed to be building such a thing eat? Except for the, I don't know. Anyway, okay, so I think we should. We're racing towards the end here, so I think we'll be done in time, which is quite lucky.
Cool.
Uh, and yeah, no, okay. So types of structures. So we're going to be talking about a couple of the most typical examples of structures from the Neolithic period. These are to be used as sort of very soft sort of templates that you can maybe use for your own world building or just as inspiration for as more basic buildings you can then build more details onto. Starting off with the longhouse. And you can see here, here's an example of the Native American longhouse here. One of the most common structures that we touched on for the linear pottery culture, it is actually an umbrella term encompassing different types of structures with different functions, yet sharing a similar superficial appearance. From those of the Nordic countries, which were often stately homes, to the enormous houses that could house dozens of people found throughout the Americas. The Guarani longhouses are particularly impressive because an entire village lived in just one. Some settlements
Mm.
with just a few dozen longhouses were veritable cities with several thousand inhabitants. And then, moving on, we have the stilt house. Stilt houses are raised buildings constructed on platforms supported by wooden poles. There are actually several different types of stilt houses. There are those found in tropical countries that are highly elevated above ground level and serve to protect inhabitants from flooding, while those found in the Alpine and Po Valley cultures are lower and have numerous poles driven deep into the ground to consolidate the silty soil that could otherwise crumble and collapse the house. Stilt-dwelling cultures were once envisioned, but unlike longhouses, stilt houses are primarily more of a practical rather than cultural solution, and as they were more suited to rougher terrain. Even the Terramare culture, the most famous stilt-dwelling culture, built buildings directly on the ground when the environment didn't actually require them to build stilts.
Mm.
Mm,
Now, that's very interesting to me
yeah.
because I don't know. It seems to me that like there's lots of instances where what were originally practical considerations then just got carried forward through tradition.
Mm,
But this is like a counterexample of that, where this is something that is like the only reason to do this is if you're living in a place that demands that you live in a place on stilts. And as soon as you can get away with not doing that,
mm.
then we scrap that idea.
I mean, yeah, absolutely. I mean, you would really think that it was like more of a cultural solution or cultural practice, but it really does seem like people trying to take the path of least resistance when it comes to constructing their buildings.
Yeah,
Yeah,
interesting.
that at least seems to be the example that we've got here. And then we get to back to our mud houses. You might be familiar with the typical mud houses of the river valley civilizations that we've covered here already. They were white, they were square, and they had flat roofs. None of the examples here are white and some of them aren't square, but they do all have flat roofs, kind of. They may seem very humble dwellings, but in reality, they could have a huge variety of shapes and sizes. They could contain single rooms or multiple rooms. They could have 2 stories. They could have an internal courtyard, etc., etc., etc. There was a lot of flexibility when it comes to building these specific types of structures. And because they were made of mud, when they collapsed, people tended to just build on top of them. So over
Hmm.
time, you would get these gigantic artificial hills called tells that would form along the entire length of the Tigris. I'm not going to pronounce that right. Tigris, and Euphrates rivers.
Hmm.
Yeah, I'm a little embarrassed. I should have looked up how more of these words pronounced. It's when I read them, it's like I got this, and then I I actually have to say it for the
I
first
mean,
time.
the English pronunciations are just, butcherings of what the original pronunciations would have been anyway, so you're fine.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, mud house. A house is made of mud. Anyway, moving on. um, right, yeah. Uh, Moving on to dry stone huts, widely found in the Mediterranean region, but also found throughout Europe as far as the Hebrides. There are various different types of dry stone huts that exist. They are often temporary shelters for shepherds or guard posts for pastures, but they could also be permanent residences. The tholos shape, which is shown in both of these examples, it's a kind of dome shaped like an egg or acorn, is very common because it ensures good stability. They were built until the modern age and have many different names. The Kuburo, the Kashiara, I'm not going to pronounce any of these right, the Trillo, the Penitus, the Baraka, the Cabana, Cabane, Clochen, Sweat House, which I can pronounce, and others. I should have written some of these actually on the slides themselves. To tell you how long they were used, Well, as an example of how long and up to how recently they have been used just in our cultures and throughout our world, according to Vincent, who helped write this section, the shepherds who worked for his grandfather still used pinettas for
Hmm.
his work as a shepherd, which is pretty interesting. So they were just out
Yeah.
there still. I mean, it's quite pretty to think. You've got them out in the countryside.
Yeah.
Very non-intrusive. Right. And now we come to aesthetics, which I believe was your main question for this entire talk on Neolithic architecture.
Yeah.
Mm,
I think we've covered quite a lot of ground, which is very good. But yeah, this
yay.
is this is the part where I kind of get unstuck a little bit.
Mm. Okay, so please bear in mind I am primarily an artist, so this is a very art teacher response. But when it comes to aesthetics in architecture, there is definitely a balance to be struck between finding your rhythm and aesthetic and prioritizing your function over form, as we talked at the very beginning. Historically, buildings are primarily functional things designed with a specific need to fill and purpose. And a purpose in mind during construction. This is true of any building, from personal homes to temples. But once the practical need or function has been filled, then more intricacies, the form, can be considered. There are a number of reasons why a culture can choose to add more detail, decoration, and aesthetic flair to their buildings. In the case of Göbekli Tepe, it's believed that the reliefs and stylized pillars were to serve the purpose of the building as a temple or monument to the religion of the area, as assuming that the temple's construction was for religious purposes. Um, and this is a very common explanation as to why some buildings push to be more than simply functional. It's why the Great Mosque of Dien, not a Neolithic structure, mind, in central Mali, is the largest mud brick building in the world. It's adorned with bundles of rhodia palm stalks across the entire construction, three large minarets jutting out from the main wall, with shaped spires topped with ostrich eggs at each peak. None of those details or design choices are strictly necessary for the building to function, but its creation in and of itself was an act of devotion. It was a physical representation of the belief of its followers, or even just a
Yeah.
desire to create and see beauty. Well, made of a desire.
Yeah.
Uh, likewise,
Yeah.
the.
No, I didn't.
Yes.
Oh, sorry. I was just
No,
going to say
please.
I didn't know the thing about the ostrich eggs. That's really cool.
Yeah, it felt like such a small detail. It's. I should have put a picture of it here as well. I'm like describing it and I
I
haven't
do
added in
like
visuals. Mm,
I do like the Mosque of Jenne, or however it's pronounced,
mm,
um, because it's just a very iconic look for a structure because it's got all of um, these wooden sticks sticking out of it, and those
yeah.
are scaffolds because, as I understand it, as part of the building material, um, it occasionally erodes, especially after periods of heavy rainfall, and
Mm,
so it yearly you have to apply new plaster on a
mm.
yearly basis. So the sticks that are stuck into the walls are specifically there so that the builders can climb up and
Wow.
replace broken sections of the wall. So that's a practical consideration. But I
Oh
didn't know
well, there
about
you
the
go.
ostrich eggs, so that's very cool.
Okay, well, let me make a bit of a revise then. Uh, um the palm sticks are for practical reasons, but the ostrich eggs are for beauty.
Yes.
Okay. Well, there you go. That's the balance between function and aesthetic. Um, because I thought it was purely for aesthetic reasons. So that is fascinating. Um, Right, likewise, the creation of grand pieces of architecture could also stem from the desires of powerful individuals, such as the Pyramid of Khufu being created as a monument not only to the king, but to the glory of his empire. And this line of thinking, this desire to prove a single individual's ego or an entire society's worth, um, or religion's devotion through the beauty and form of architecture, or even simply the desire to create and to behold, to make something beautiful because one can, has led to the creation of many incredibly great structures throughout history, from European cathedrals to palaces to castles around the world to temples and entire cities carved into mountains. As you said earlier, when it comes to real life architecture, it follows the rhythm of the time. And for a very long time, there was a push to make the important buildings and structures more detailed, more extravagant, to add more emphasis to them. They wanted them to be as impressive as they could possibly make them. They wanted to add friezes, statues, color, more details in the pillars, and more patterns in the mantles. It was a statement of how much money one had, how much power one had, and how much desire the creators had to make something better than what had ever been made before with the best tools available at that time. There is no such thing as too much, really. It is the entire point behind the maximalist movement, and it's rooted in dozens of other different artistic movements, culminating into Rococo, Gothic, and Modernisme styles. And when it comes to fiction, it can be difficult to know how much or how little you can push in creating fictional architecture. At what point does it become arbitrary? Unfortunately, as I've just basically said over the course of a page, we have explored the motivations for some of the most ornate architecture, and it is more or less arbitrary. Of course, the actual details themselves can have meaning. A temple that is decorated with friezes and paintings of their religious myths, statues of venerated animals, and moldings decorated with intricate repeating patterns of flora and fauna has a very good reason for being adorned in that way. But ultimately, it never really needed that level of adornment in the first place. The people who built it simply thought it had to. It was a creation born from the desire of that culture. The Louvre, for example, is filled with very relevant artwork, but the artwork itself is just icing on the cake. It's decoration on an already functional building. So when it comes to aesthetics, it's important to understand the culture that the buildings are being made in before wondering if the decorations you're adding are pointless. And this is, I talk about this a bit in my culture pyramid, the 2 videos that I made for that, where I kind of put everything in order, and I put architecture at the absolute end, second to last. And this is kind of why I did that, because I feel like you should know a lot more about the culture before you start talking about the architecture, because architecture is pretty much 50% art, and you have to know the culture you're writing the art for before you get down to the actual buildings of it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's very useful to bear in mind, I think.
Oh, I'm glad. Yeah, Çatalhöyük is filled with decor. The walls were patterned with geometric reliefs. It had zigzags and animals and hunting scenes. The walls and sleeping areas were affixed with the skulls of bulls that were covered in plaster and turned into apparently decorative wall sculptures. They didn't need to be there, but they are, and that alone tells us as much about the culture that lived there as their buried dead or the structure of their city. They had a desire to create art in their spaces, whether it was motivated by religious worship, aesthetic desire, or competitive displays of wealth. We don't really know, but we know that it's there, and it adds so much context and commentary on the place and time in which its creators lived, which is also why, yes, yeah, why I recommend designing a culture's architecture last along with their art. Yeah, so, yeah, ultimately, it's fiction. You can do whatever you want forever. That is my motto. And I hope that helps. I know that I may have undercut everything I just said by saying that, but
No, that's cool.
okay, I'm glad. And we are, oh, we've got 10 minutes. Do I have time? I have time. Okay.
Oh,
Technology of the
speed
time.
run.
Yeah, speedrun. With all this architecture here came tools at the time that were used to make these incredible constructions. We have hafted tools, meaning tools that were attached to wooden handles. They had been in use for quite a while, and polished and ground stone tools were developed at the beginning of the Neolithic era, with many of these tools still recognizable and used in their more modern forms today. These are the chisels, your gouges here that are, as you can see, visualized, made out of stones such as jadeite, diorite, or schist, and are therefore stronger than the once popular flint, as well as simple stone hammers. Well, I don't know if these exact images are made out of those specific materials, but These are examples of ground stone tools that were hafted. Um, but the stars of the show, right? The stars of the show here are two specific tools: the stone axe and a tool called the adze. The axe was a simple but extremely important development. The ground edge was tough and easily resharpened, thus allowing people to clear forested areas independently and letting them chop down and process trees in bulk to be used for construction. The second tool was the adze. Similar to the axe, but with the edge perpendicular to the handle instead of parallel. These nifty tools were used for two things: to smooth and carve wood, and as a hoe for agriculture. During the Neolithic, the adze could have been used for everything from felling trees to shaping wooden architecture to constructing furniture, wheeled vehicles, and walls for subterranean wells. Speaking of wheeled vehicles, they were a 4th millennium BCE development, only coming into fashion at the absolute end of the Neolithic period. They actually started out as a tool for pottery making in ancient Mesopotamia, with the first recorded use of them as wheels for vehicles, small chariots, and carts, roughly 500 years later in around 3500 BCE. Interestingly enough, it was also invented again completely independently in China around 2800 BCE. However, it's unlikely that they used carts to transport wood or large stones in the Neolithic. The simplest way to transport them was instead to use logs as rollers or to carry the objects on rafts across rivers. One way to extract the stones, other than simply smoothing the boulders, is to drill holes in the rock and insert wooden wedges. Once wet and left in the sun, the wood would expand, therefore, and then splitting the rock. This was the most common method used by humans practically until the invention of industrial machinery and dynamite, and we are done. The wheel, not really. I also had trouble finding visuals for the wheels. So these aren't actually, I don't think, pottery wheels. These are just wheels made out of pottery, um, which is what Google gave me every time I tried to change the search. There we go. And we did it. Congrats, everyone. Yay.
Yeah,
Let's see.
that was really good.
Yay. Okay, and then I will put up our things again. Hello. Welcome back. Yeah.
Yeah.
I need to catch my breath
I
after
will go
that.
ahead and throw in
Please
one
do.
quick little tidbit as well. We're talking about the wheel.
Yes.
Um, even though the wheel was not really employed in Mesoamerica, um, we know that uh, they knew about wheels
Mm,
because we have various artifacts. We have like children's toys that have little wheels on them.
mm.
Um, so they understood the principle of wheels. They just chose not to use them because again, the
That's pretty
terrain just
funny.
wasn't really appropriate for it.
Mm, mm,
So I don't know if that was a third independent invention of the wheel.
mm.
Um, but in either case, yeah, pretty cool.
Nah, still super cool. 100%. Okay. Um, yeah. So, thank you for being here. Thank you for listening.
Hmm.
Do you
Thank
have
you very
any?
much for putting all of this together.
It was a lot of fun. Hey, I'll tell you that much. Um, yeah. Do you have any last minute questions? Any points?
Um, I don't think so. I you've certainly given me a lot to think about and a lot of inspiration for stuff to apply to my culture of alien architects.
Mm,
Um, so yeah, I look forward to putting all of these principles uh, into effect in upcoming stuff. So thank you very much.
awesome. Okay. Thank you. Yeah. I know my my writing tends to be very what should I say, human focused. So I'm really glad that
Mhm.
yeah, you can at least apply some of the concepts and rules to yours.
Mm.
Uh,
I mean, I guess it's a little bit late in the game to bring this up now, but
oh,
this is, I didn't want to overcomplicate things, but this particular species are, um, to put it very simply, they love architecture. They
mm,
have like a natural predilection for architecture because they evolved from animals that had that built these very elaborate nesting structures. Long story, but figuring out how that's all going to come into play with the way they designed their cities and houses and things. That's going to be
mm.
very fun.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay. Wonderful. Okay. Oh yeah, everyone say thank you to Jerry for keeping us company.
Yeah, Jerry has a lot of fans, evidently.
No, clearly. I think 70 of the people watching are for Jerry. um yeah, awesome. Okay. Right, we are about 3 minutes away from the end of our stream. If you don't know, this stream will automatically redirect to the next one in the order of our festival. The next one will be Conlang Intention Setting, hosted
Mm-hmm.
by Let's Have a Boba. And yeah, they're going to be talking about conlangs, intentions, and settings. um,
Yeah. I
yeah,
don't know specifically what Miles has planned, but I am sure it will be very fun.
yeah, for sure. I'm definitely gonna stick around to watch the at least the first part because I'm interested. I know very little about conlangs. It seems very fun, and I've been saying I'm gonna learn about it more often for I think maybe years now. But I've never quite actually gotten up and done it. Um, so yeah, no, it's super
Well,
cool.
if you need any help with it, do let me know.
Yes, you're also an
Um,
expert.
well, expert is a strong word, but
You sell yourself
um,
short.
hmm, well, in 1 hour's time, you'll get to see me again for the third time today,
Hmm,
uh, when McCain, if you are still, yes, you are still here, will be teaching me things about economics.
awesome. Okay, wonderful. You're learning a lot today.
You're going to be really, really sick of me by the end of this weekend.
Nah, not possible. Um, okay. Right. Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone who's here watching. Thank you if you stuck around for the whole thing. And if you only popped in and out, that's also amazing. It's just very cool that you're here at all. Yeah. And it's been a wonderful time. It's been a wonderful Saturday.
Hmm,
Uh, I
yeah.
am watching the clock. We are in the final countdown. Um, uh, I'm glad you guys all liked it. Yeah, I'm just reading through the chat.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think this is very successful.
Yeah, I'm very pleased with. I mean, I didn't contribute all that much in the long run, but again, thank you very much for putting this all
Nah,
together.
it's wonderful to have a trapped audience with whom I can just keep talking to and they can't leave. Okay. Uh, awesome. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's the end of it.
Cool.
Right. Okay.
Lovely. Thank you very
Awesome.
much.
Okay. Bye, guys.
See you in